Stocks jumped 300% after the Federal Reserve comes out today with this plan to combat inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to listen to directly from the Federal Reserve Chair, Mr. Jerome Powell, as he talks about the Fed's what they're going to do to combat all this inflation, because that's what everybody's talking about. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and make sure hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, hit that like, comment, and share button. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, you are now tuned into the Investor Show. As always, this is your gracious host, the Prince of Investing, Prince Dice, coming to you guys and girls live all the way from the beautiful city and state of Denver, Colorado. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share button. And as always, I don't have a lot of time, and I definitely, you guys and girls don't have a lot of time, so we are going to jump straight into it. So the first thing that's on the menu is inflation. Yes. Oh, you know what? If you are live, tell me where you're from if you are catching this live. All right. Inflation. That's what everybody's talking about. But, you know, where do you find the raw, real inflationary data? Because, you know, right here on the Investor Show, Prince Dykes, I'm going to teach you how to fish. So let's grab your tackle boxes. Let's go on a fishing trip. So what you're going to do is, let me share this screen here. We're going to head on over. Let me change this background back here so you can see it a little bit better. I know those words get in the way sometimes, make it a little bit hard to read. There we go. So you're going to head on the screen here. And this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This came out on December 10th, right? And right here, it says pretty much inflation has rose to 6.8%. It says the consumer price index for all urban consumables, CPIU, increased 0.8% in November on a seasonal adjusted basis after raising 0.9% in October. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today over the last 12 months that all items index increased to 6.8% before seasonal adjustment. That's not what's good, because 6.8% is what they reported as of inflation in November on December 10th. And you know, what is the Federal Reserve's inflation goal? Is 2%. So we're way high above inflation. All eyes on the Feds. The markets was down on Monday and Tuesday, waiting on what the Federal Reserve plan was to be on inflation. But here live today, we're going to listen to the Federal Reserve Chair, Mr. Jerome Powell. Let me go ahead and delete him out here. And we're going to look at what their plan is. Let me pull the screen up, and I'm going to share it here in a second. And we all going to tune in live, and we're going to listen to what he had to say. And of course, I'm going to give you that great commentary. Well, at least I think it's great, that you guys and girls love and enjoy. But let me see what y'all say in the comment box before we hear from Mr. Jerome Powell. What's going on, Jordan J? Jordan J said, combat inflation. How you plan on doing that? Let me give my little thank you for taking it in, Jordan J. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into it. There we go. That's my guy, Al. What's going on, Al? And Al said, that's my thing, fishing. Oh yeah. We know how you love to fish. Max B, that's my guy. He's always in here holding me down. Max B says, happy holidays. If the Feds plan to raise rates, should we look into bank stocks? You know it. Also look into FAS. FAS is that's a leverage bullish, very risky. I'm not telling this any advice, but one of the ways you can do it is you can look at XLF, which is the index for financials. And you also can look into FAS, which is a 3-time bullish index on finances as well. But yes, banks do profit from rising interest rates. So let's not talk about it some more. Let's bring in Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell, what do you got to say about this inflation? He's coming in live today, and we're going to play it, and we're going to give you his review. Let's see what he got to say. It's about 2-3 hours ago. So here we go. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear this.
Good afternoon. At the Federal Reserve, we are strongly committed to achieving the monetary policy goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment and price stability. Today, in support of these goals, the Federal Open Market Committee kept interest rates near zero and updated its assessment of the progress that the economy has made toward the criteria specified in the committee's forward guidance for interest rates. In addition, in light of the strengthening.
Now, the first thing he said they did was they kept interest rates near zero. They decided not to move interest rates. That's the first key. So that's a gem right there. Did not move interest rates. Interest rates are staying the same. Let's go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Labor market and elevated inflation pressures, we decided to speed up the reductions in our asset purchases. As I will explain, economic developments and changes in the outlook warrant this evolution of monetary policy, which will continue to provide appropriate support for the economy. Economic activity is on track to expand at a robust pace this year, reflecting progress on vaccinations and the reopening of the economy. Aggregate demand remains very strong, buoyed by fiscal and monetary policy support and the healthy financial positions of households and businesses. The rise in COVID cases in recent weeks, along with the emergence of the Omicron variant, pose risks to the outlook. Notwithstanding the effects of the virus and supply constraints, FOMC participants continue to foresee.
Now, one thing he said they're going to do, they're going to speed up slowing their asset purchasing, aka pumping money into the economy, pumping money into the market. They had announced this at their last meeting that they was going to start this at the end of November. Now they're saying they're going to speed it up. So now they're going to stop pumping money into the market. So if you stop purchasing, when they stop purchasing assets, that's hopefully to drive some of the liquidity and to kind of curb the economy back a little bit. But let's go ahead. What else you got to say, Mr. Powell?
Rapid growth. As shown in our summary of economic projections, the median projection for real GDP growth stands at 5.5% this year and 4% next year. Amid improving labor market conditions and very strong demand for workers, the economy has been making rapid progress toward maximum employment. Job gains have been solid in recent months, averaging 378,000 per month over the last 3 months. The unemployment rate has declined substantially, falling 0.6 of a percentage point since our last meeting and reaching 4.2% in November. The recent improvements in labor market conditions have narrowed the differences in employment across groups, especially for workers at the lower end of the wage distribution, as well as for African Americans and Hispanics. Labor force participation showed a welcome rise in November, but remains subdued, in part reflecting the aging of the population and retirements. In addition, some who otherwise would be seeking work report that they are out of the labor force because of factors related to the pandemic, including caregiving needs and ongoing concerns about the virus. At the same time, employers are having difficulties filling job openings, and wages are rising at their fastest pace in many years. How long the labor shortages will persist is unclear, particularly if additional waves of the virus occur. Looking ahead, FOMC participants.
So you see here, he's talking about unemployment, right? He's talking about wage rising has happened the fastest it has ever happened in many years, where you're looking at places like McDonald's that used to pay when I was 18, 19, about 20 years ago, when I was working for minimum wage, it was $15 an hour. And here you're talking about now, McDonald's is paying in some places $20 an hour starting out. So you're seeing wages just rise. Amazon came out and said everybody's making $15 an hour as a minimum wage. So you're seeing wages just rise. You're seeing the labor shortage happen, and it's becoming very competitive to find people to work. So that's very important right there as he's speaking more to unemployment. Unemployment is very key indicator that the Federal Reserve wants to get to, because they say, hey, yes, we have these inflationary prices going up, but guess what? We want unemployment to get a little bit lower. So they're watching unemployment, and that's why they kind of gauge, what they can do with interest rates before cooling off the market too much, before they can reach what they like to call maximum employment. Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Project the labor market to continue to improve, with the median projection for the unemployment rate declining to 3.5% by the end of the year. Compared with the projections made in September, participants have revised their unemployment rate projections noticeably lower for this year and next.
Son, we're grabbing burgers for dinner if you're interested.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. Let me
I'm
get through this
vegan,
commercial here on
Walter.
YouTube. I should have
You had
downloaded this
bacon for
video. Okay.
breakfast.
Okay, Mr.
All right, there we
Perfect.
go.
What a really
Supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic and the reopening of the economy have continued to contribute to elevated levels of inflation. In particular, bottlenecks and supply constraints are limiting how quickly production can respond to higher demand in the near term. These problems have been larger and longer lasting than anticipated, exacerbated by waves of the virus. As a result, overall inflation is running well above our 2% longer run goal and will likely continue to do so well into next year. While the drivers of higher inflation have been predominantly connected to the dislocations caused by the pandemic, price increases have now spread to a broader range of goods and services. Wages have also risen briskly, but thus far, wage growth has not been a major contributor to the elevated levels of inflation. We are attentive to the risks that
So y'all here he says, hey, all this inflation at 6.8% that you're seeing is mostly largely due to the pandemic. I kind of agree, but I don't. But a lot of things that they could say, we live in very low interest rates. You're giving it a child tax credit every single month. You are what else they're doing? You know, they gave out trillions of dollars spending plans, trillions of dollars to people in stimulus checks. But they're saying that's all because of the pandemic, the PPP loans, all this money that's floating around that has increased the demand for goods and services, that has increased the prices. They're saying this is all connected back to the pandemic. In a way, you could say that, but hey, what do you want to believe?
persistent real wage growth in excess of productivity could put upward pressure on inflation. Like most forecasters, we continue to expect inflation to decline to levels closer to our 2% longer run goal by the end of next year. The median inflation projection of FOMC participants falls from 5.3% this year to 2.6% next year. This trajectory is notably higher than projected in September.
You can look at this projection here a little bit. He's saying that they're expecting inflation to, by this time next year, to be back at their projected goal of 2%. I like to see that, but hey, we will see. And they're going to talk about how they're going to do that. Here we go.
We understand that high inflation imposes significant hardship, especially on those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are committed to our price stability goal. We will use our tools both to support the economy and a strong labor market and to prevent higher inflation from becoming entrenched. We will be watching carefully to see whether the economy is evolving in line with expectations. The Fed's monetary policy actions have been guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. In support of these goals, the committee reaffirmed the 0 to 1/4% target range for the federal funds rate. We also updated our assessment of the progress the economy has made toward the criteria specified in our forward guidance for the federal funds rate. With inflation having exceeded 2% for some time, the committee expects it will be appropriate to maintain this target range until labor market conditions have reached levels consistent with the committee's assessments of maximum employment. All FOMC participants forecast that this remaining test will be met next year. The median projection for the appropriate level of the federal funds rate is 0.9% at the end of 2022, about a half percentage point higher than projected in September. Participants expect a gradual pace of policy firming, with the level of the federal funds rate generally near estimates of its longer run level by the end of 2024. Of course, these projections do not represent a committee decision or plan.
So right here, you see he's talking about starting next year, they're looking at raising interest rates about 3 times to get to their projected goal of, I think it's about 2% is what they have. So they're looking at, hey, we're going to knock down this inflation to 2% by next year by raising these interest rates starting next year.
No one knows with any certainty where the economy will be a year or more from now. At today's meeting, the committee also decided to double the pace of reductions in its asset purchases. Beginning in mid-January, we will reduce the monthly pace of our net asset purchases by $20 billion for Treasury securities and $10 billion for agency mortgage-backed securities. If the economy evolves broadly as expected, similar reductions in the pace of net asset purchases will likely be appropriate each month, implying that increases in our securities holdings would cease by mid-March, a few months sooner than we anticipated in early November. We are phasing out our purchases more rapidly because with elevated inflation pressures and a rapidly strengthening labor market, the economy no longer needs increasing amounts of policy support. In addition, a quicker conclusion of our asset purchases will better position policy to address the full range of plausible economic outcomes. We remain prepared to adjust the pace of purchases if warranted by changes in the economic outlook. And even after our balance sheet stops expanding, our holdings of securities will continue to foster accommodative financial conditions. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to complete the recovery in employment and achieve our price stability goal. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
All right, so there you have it. He's pretty much saying that, hey, what we're looking at doing is we're going to speed up slowing our asset. We're going to speed up slowing asset purchases, meaning they're going to stop pumping money into the market, buying assets and things like that, because the more assets you buy, the price goes up. They're going to speed that up to combat inflation, but they're going to keep an eye on inflation to where if something happens in the economy, they can slow that back down if need to be. Then they're looking at raising interest rates about 3 times next year to get inflation. Their goal by the end of next year is to have inflation back down to 2%. Right now, we're at 6.8%. So here we go. So it's simple and easy. They're going to looking at raising interest rates next year. And from now until March, they're going to be slowing down buying their asset purchasing back from assets. So there you go. That's the Federal Reserve's answer to raising up to combat inflation. And you saw the stock market reacted with a 300-point jump from that happening. So, hey, we'll look to see what happened. Let me see what y'all say in the comments before I get up out of here. Max B, my guy, Max B said, what is the target unemployment number and when will he think the pandemic is behind us? Okay, so they don't never really give out the target unemployment number. I had to go back and do my research and see what was unemployment prior to the pandemic happening. And I think it was around 3%. They keep saying we want maximum unemployment number, and they keep talking about this mysterious number. So apparently they're discussing the number they want unemployment to be, but they're not releasing that to the public. But they always keep saying maximum unemployment, which right now we're at 4.2%. So we're seeing unemployment come down and we're seeing inflation go up, and they're trying to remove some of their policies back. Like, we don't need to be purchasing so many assets. We can slow that down now. But they're trying to do it at a pace to where unemployment can keep going till we can pull out the pandemic. The pandemic, I don't know if we're really in a pandemic anymore. I think we're in a new phase of life. I never would have thought a million years, when the pandemic hit, that I'll be talking about this almost 2 years later. But, now they got a new strand coming out. That's the other thing they talked about too. They talked about the pandemic. Great question there, Mac B. They talked about the pandemic as well when they spoke about, a lot of this happened because of the pandemic, and we're trying to navigate out of the pandemic. And I don't really think COVID-19 will actually really go away. I don't know if it's actually going to be like, hey, this never happened again. I think it's going to be around in some form, forever. Now, am I going to keep getting booster shot after booster shot and a shot for the new variants? I'm not going through all of that. But, I don't know, because, I think it's going to be new strands. I think it's almost kind of a way of life that we got to kind of learn to get over. But we will get over this, and we will get to a point to like, man, you remember when the pandemic first happened and we thought that, it was the end of the world. But I think that it may be pushing us to a new phase of life instead of like everybody's looking to go back to pre-pandemic. And I think that this is just a new way of life, counter with the pandemic going on. That's my thoughts. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. You heard from Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve today, who just spoke about 3-4 hours ago live. The Federal Reserve are very powerful. The tools they have, they can purchase assets, they can sell assets, they control the interest rates that the banks receive, which control the interest rates that you and I as consumers and Americans receive across the globe. So that's very important to hear from him to see what he has to say. They are acknowledging unemployment, but they're also they're acknowledging inflation, but they're also acknowledging unemployment and the other economical factors as far as the GDP and things like that to make sure we're on par. So they're trying to speed it up a little bit, slowing down that asset purchase, reevaluate the market and see how things go. But there we have it. The market loved what he had to say. 300 points jump. They decided not to touch the stock market. So, hey, we'll see. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, comment, share button, all of the good stuff. As always, My name is Prince Dykes. I'm the Prince of Investing. And to the next video, podcast, cartoon, or whatever else crazy y'all see me doing around the globe, peace, be safe. I'm out, and thank you.